One night of fights. UFC Fight Night Nashville just concluded, and the Black Beast comes through. What did I say? That was our big pick this week. First round knockout finish for Derrick Lewis. We said it in our best bets video we made earlier in the week. We said it with our predictions video. We had Derrick Lewis all week long. I did not think Tallison Teixeira was that good. And look what happened. We hit. The Black Beast wins, and now you can make a legitimate case that Derrick Lewis should be fighting for a world championship in his next fight. He's not going to, because I think that deserves to go to an assortment of fighters over Derrick Lewis, Jailton Almeida obviously being first. But Derrick Lewis is victorious. He's likely one fight away from the world championship now. Just a crazy night. Crazy night of fights, a lot of good fights, a huge robbery in the co-main event. But again, we have to kick off the video with Derrick Lewis going out there, cashing as a plus 265 dog. I said it earlier in the week. I did not understand the odds for that fight, and I did not understand the odds for Calvin Kattar versus Steve Garcia. We hit on both of those. We had a 10-2 week with UFC Nashville. And before we get into the full card recap, folks, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more UFC and MMA content here on the channel. Tomorrow, we're going to have our UFC 318 predictions. Obviously, Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway, their trilogy from New Orleans, Louisiana. Okay, so I haven't done one of these recaps yet. First time here on Greedo Plays MMA, so I'm just going to go fight by fight and give you my thoughts, just because, you know, what we were doing previously on the Greedo Plays channel and already so far in Greedo Plays MMA, I just do predictions. I don't get a chance to talk about the actual fights when they happen, so that's what this is going to be used for. Let's talk about our first fight of the night, and just talk about the entire card. Our first fight, Fatima Kline and Melissa Martinez. I don't know how long I'm going to go on each fight. This fight, I don't really have much to say other than it's exactly what we thought was going to happen. We thought Fatima Kline was going to beat Melissa Martinez. This was a fight that Fatima Kline was in control of throughout its entirety. Again, you can look at the final strike total, 95-52 for Kline. She obviously won. Yeah, again, she was dominating. She was well on her way to winning a 30-27 decision. Ultimately, she ends up getting the TKO win over Martinez, which, again, we completely thought was going to happen. Or we thought she was going to win by decision. Didn't know if she was going to be able to get a finish. And that was really the only question I had. Because when we looked at that fight, Fatima Kline was a minus 905 favorite going into that one. This is a fighter who I do think is still really good. First fight in the UFC was a loss to Jasmine Jasdavidius, wins back-to-back fights over Victoria Dudakova and Melissa Martinez. This is a good UFC fighter, and I really want to see her taking on tougher opponents as we go. This is a former CFFC champion, and I get it, CFFC is just one of those regionals. It's a mixed bag sometimes. You get really good prospects and you get really bad prospects. Fatima Kline looks like she's going to be in the top 15 of the strawweight division, I think, very soon. Just because, again, you look at the rankings, there's a lot of fighters who are just borderline top 15. Like, I'll present you a couple fighters at strawweight right now, and tell me whether or not you think Fatima Kline can beat them. Denise Gomez, ranked 15th. Loma Lugbumi, ranked 14th. Tisha Pennington, ranked 13th. I think I would like Fatima Kline in a lot of those fights. You know, hell, Angela Hill, Lupi Godinez probably beats her for now. But in any fight where Kline's going to get a striking battle for the most part, she's going to win. So an impressive performance for her. I don't know where Melissa Martinez goes from here. Legitimately, there's no future for her. I'm just going to be honest with you. That might sound harsh, but I don't know where she goes from here. Fatima Kline wins, gets the finish with the head kick finish, obviously, in the third round. Good win for her. Expected, obviously, like a couple of fights early on in this card, like this one. Our next fight, Mitch Ramirez, Mike Davis. Mike Davis wins it. Second round TKO. Davis looked really good in the first round. Second round, obviously got a takedown early in the fight in the first. Second round, more of a striking, competition. Mitch Ramirez is landing some. I'll give him credit there, but ultimately, right, it was just a matter of time before Mike Davis found a finish in that one. Davis ultimately, right, wins the fight by second round TKO. Just a guy, and I will always say this about Mike Davis, I want to see him more active, right? He catches Ramirez in tight, catches him with the knee, obviously finishes the fight via the TKO. Just a guy that needs to be more active. I say it every time Mike Davis fights. This is a 12-3 fighter, but in the UFC, Mike Davis is 5-2 now. His losses are Gilbert Burns back in 2019 and Fair Ziam, who's now on the borderline of being ranked. This is just a fighter we need to see more. And I think 2 fights in 2025 is a step in the right direction, because you look at what Mike Davis did prior to 2025. 1 fight in 2021, 1 fight in 2022, no fights in 2023, 1 fight in 2024, and obviously the Ziam fight and the Mitch Ramirez fight, obviously now just tonight. So It's important that Davis stays in there. We knew it going into this fight. This was just a mismatch, okay? We knew Mitch Ramirez was not on the level of Mike Davis, but he was coming off a loss. You can't really book him too high in the rankings right now. This is a guy who I would still think is a couple fights away from being ranked at 155 pounds just because he's not the most active. If you want a fun matchup, go him and Nazim Sadikov. You know, if the UFC is going to start pumping up Sadikov a little bit more, take him back to wherever the hell in Europe, I wouldn't mind it because I don't anticipate the UFC going back to Azerbaijan. But that's a matchup I wouldn't mind seeing. That's a fun one. You could see a fight like Thiago Moises where, you know, I think we know how that fight's probably going to go. I think Mike Davis probably gets Moises, but a somewhat fun stylistic matchup, right? You will see how Davis deals with the grappling game of Thiago, but I like the defensive grappling out of Mike Davis a lot. He showed again, I know Mitch Ramirez is not the highest level guy, but literally everything you could have wanted in a Mike Davis fight, you got today, other than a first round finish, right? Dominates the first round, looks good in the second round. Ramirez finds the mark a little bit, but ultimately, right, it's a Mike Davis victory, and Davis goes out there and picks up the win. So a good victory for him on the undercard. Again, an expected result as a minus 1,000 favorite, but we just need to see him more active. Okay. Our third fight of the night, first underdog winning, Kennedy Nzechukwu, Valter Walker. So this was one of the two fights we did not hit on today. I'm glad we hit our best bet. So if you watched our prediction video, obviously we predict every single fight every single week. We're having that. We do that with the UFC and with the PFL as well. So again, UFC 318 coming up tomorrow, and then PFL Africa for the first time on Monday. But I also did a best bets video. That's either going to take place every Tuesday or Wednesday here on the channel. Probably Wednesday, but we'll see. Maybe Tuesday going forward. And our best bet was one of our 5 best bets, as we went 4-1 on the best bets. We'll get into that later. I guess 3-2. But we had a positive day with the best bets. We went Valter Walker, Kennedy Nzechukwu under, and it hit for us. It was a big win for us. We went the under on this fight. And it was 2.5 rounds, which I thought was highway robbery. I said at the time, okay, if Nzechukwu wins, I know he's a slow starter, but every single fight that he's had so far in the UFC that he's won has ended before the 2.5 round mark. So eventually, okay, Nzechukwu, and it was different at heavyweight so far. But, you know, even when he was at light heavyweight, when he was fighting the Devin Clarks, when he was fighting the Ion Cutelabas, when he was fighting Carlos Ulberg, which is still a great victory for him, he was breaking guys towards the second round and early third round, how the Danilo Marquez fight, right? So ultimately I thought, okay, this fight's got to end before 2:30, obviously in the third round. And then Valter Walker, if he's going to win, it's going to be by submission, right? And Valter Walker now, 3 fights in the UFC, 3 heel hook finishes. We've got to start talking about Valter Walker as a serious threat now to the top 15 of the weight class. I don't know if that's where you book him next. Considering how weak heavyweight is, I wouldn't mind it. But if the UFC wants to take their time with Valter Walker, there are guys he will easily beat on the way up the rankings right now. Heavyweight, we know, is just bad. And I was going to say, if Nzechukwu won, I would have liked to seen him fight in the top 15 next. Well, Valter Walker, since losing the Lucas Brzeski fight, has won 3 in a row. Tafa, Mays, and Nzechukwu, all by first-round heel hook. That's special, man. The way that he's able to, first of all, the way that Walker, we'll get to Tafa later, but the way that Walker's able, I know it's a 54-second fight, but the way Walker is able to just pursue Nzechukwu and kind of push the pace and really blitz Kennedy and just make him, fight defensively right off the gates is completely different than what I thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to be, okay, Valter is trying to maintain distance with a long, lanky heavyweight, which Walker is in his own right as well, but the way he was immediately able to, I believe he connected with the right on Kennedy and then scramble, get into the clinch, and obviously drop down to the heel hook. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. I didn't pick Valter Walker, but my goodness was I impressed. And obviously I was more than happy we hit our under 2.5 rounds. We did it 54 seconds into the fight. I was more than impressed with Valter Walker. For Nzechukwu, it is what it is. Kennedy, I never thought Kennedy was going to be a champion. Let's just be honest. I thought Kennedy was going to have a potential spot in the top 15. I think he still does eventually, just because, okay, we look at the bottom of the top 15 of the heavyweight division. It's horrible. You know it. I know it. The American people know it. And that's how Valter Walker should be in the top 15 after this fight. How Tallison Teixeira is now 1-1 in the UFC. Well, he's the current ranked 13th best heavyweight in the world. McParkin's coming off a loss. He's 12. Tai Tuivasa hasn't won a fight in 4 years. He's 10. I'm over-exaggerating there some. But Rizvan Kuniev hasn't won a fight in the UFC yet. He's ranked 15th. Right. Walter Walker's going to be ranked, and I think he should get a fight against a guy like Rizvan Kuniev. Seriously. Rank Walter Walker if you want, but sure. Give him Rizvan Kuniev, and let's see how good Rizvan Kuniev really is. Was it okay Curtis Blades is just getting to the point where he's kind of washed now, or is Kuniev the real deal? I don't know where that's going to be. I think Walter Walker would beat Rizvan Kuniev, but a great victory for him, right? Walter Walker presents a challenge for a lot of heavyweights in the UFC that I just don't think a lot of them are able to overcome. And that problem is, and that challenge is that they can't grapple. How many guys in the top 15 of the UFC's heavyweight division can't really grapple? Okay, I'm going to start number 1 in the rankings, Ciryl Gane. I'm not telling you Walter Walker beats Ciryl Gane in a fight, but just guys who straight up don't have good grappling games. Ciryl Gane, Sergey Pavlovich leaves a lot to be desired. We'll see about Waldo. I don't know. Jury's still out on him. He's fought nothing but bums. And he out-grappled and out-maintained in the clinch. Robella's to Spain. I don't know what to make of Waldo yet. Derrick Lewis. Love Derrick Lewis. We're talking about him later. And I don't think Walter Walker would beat Derrick Lewis just because I think that's a tough fight for him. But Tai Tuivasa, like Walter Walker would destroy Tai Tuivasa, right? Tallison Teixeira. I don't know. He's ranked, so we got to talk about him. Like, would Walter Walker beat Tallison Teixeira? Maybe, right? I told you guys, again, Tallison Teixeira is not as good as you think he is. And then Martin Budai. I mean, like, again, the one thing that just doesn't make sense about Walter Walker is the Lucas Brzeski loss. But over a year ago, he's had 3 consecutive wins since. Yeah, I'd like to see him fight up the rankings next, obviously. I don't know what I want for Nzechukwu, honestly. We can go Janata Denise. I would probably dip even further down the rankings, though. Even though, again, I think Denise would be a decent fight. The thing is, they just don't have a lot of, like, low-level heavy... Let me make this clear. The UFC doesn't have a lot of just guys who are slightly above the low-level heavyweight rank, if that makes any sense. I would do Mo Usman versus Kenny Nzechukwu next. It's a fight that Nzechukwu can win, and if Usman wins, okay, now we gotta treat Kamaru's brother like he's somewhat competent, okay? That's what I would do, but great win from Walter Walker. Boy, was I impressed. Okay, our 4th fight, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I was completely, I'm not going to like toot my own horn on this for a minus 625 favorite, but I think it is important I do like mention how right I was about this fight. Again, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but the fight literally played out how I thought it was going to, okay? Eduarda Moura was going to have so much success early, and as the fight went on, who knows, right? Lauren Murphy's, she had that submission, right? She had the sub in the 3rd round. Ultimately, she doesn't get that Darce choke. Eduarda Moura wins, okay? But we said going into the fight, I thought Lauren Murphy, again, I didn't think Lauren Murphy was going to win, but I thought there were much worse plus 425 dogs you could bet. Again, I didn't pick Lauren Murphy, but I was just really surprised looking at the odds. Now, Lauren Murphy has retired from mixed martial arts. That's okay. I'm just going to be honest. I'm not going to miss watching Lauren Murphy fight, okay? But it's always been a thing for Eduarda Moura. How does she respond late in fights? She looks good early, but, you know, the gas tank kind of falls off as she goes. And obviously, Lauren Murphy had her moment in the 3rd round, but ultimately an expected result from Eduarda Moura, beating a 41 going on 42-year-old Lauren Murphy. For Moura now 3-1 in the UFC, right? Wins over Montserrat Ruiz, Veronica Hardy, and the Murphy fight, the only loss being back in June of 2024 to Denise Gomez, who is a ranked fighter in the weight class. Is Eduarda Moura, you know, going to get a ranked fight next? Definitely not. You know, even though Lauren Murphy, you know, is a former title challenger, I think Moura is still a fight away from the top 15 of the weight class. It just depends on what the UFC wants to do with her next. They could easily just throw her Kong Wang, and that's a fight I would really easily expect Kong Wang to win. Or they can, you know, give her like a Casey O'Neill, which I think Casey O'Neill would win. I mean, 125, in all fairness, is, I guess it's the best women's weight class. Yeah, I know it has to be. Yeah, this is the best women's weight class. So, I mean, Wang Kong is ranked. She's 14th. Damn, I guess I'm looking at, like, all the fighters at 125 right now. There's not many. I mean, who else do you have Moura fight before the top 15? JJ Aldridge is ranked. O'Neill's ranked 13th? Wow. Okay, yeah, arguably, Moura is fighting down. Oh, didn't she call out Jamie Lynn Horth? She called out Jamie Lynn Horth, didn't she? I believe she did. Okay. She called her, like, Jamie Lee Horth. Okay, yeah. Actually, that's the fight you make. All right. Because, I'll be honest, I don't want to see either of those fighters in the top 15. Eduarda Moura does nothing for me. Jamie Lynn Horth does nothing for me, okay? Have them fight each other, and then, okay, the winner is actually worthy of fighting in the top 15. So that's the fight I would do next. Moura, she beat a 42-year-old Lauren Murphy. It's nothing to write home about. Good victory for her, but she's a fighter that is going to fall off a cliff as the fight goes on. She's not great anywhere, but that's just kind of how women's fighting goes if you're not a top 5 fighter. For Lauren Murphy, it's everything we expected, right? Just, maybe she would have had a chance late in the fight. She did. Couldn't capitalize. Eduarda Moura wins. I don't really feel like talking about this fight anymore. Okay, Jake Matthews, Chidi Njokuani. So we had Jake Matthews to win. Not like that, though. Really good victory for Jake Matthews. Incredible win. Gets in the clinch really early with Chidi Njokuani. Basically flips him to a certain degree. Anyways, ends up on his back, and Njokuani's back with like 30 seconds into the fight. Ultimately, Jake Matthews finds his way to the rear naked choke. He's got it, and Njokuani builds back up. Jake Matthews finds a way to wrench in that submission and ultimately wins by first round rear naked. Great victory for him, right? I thought Matthews was going to win. I didn't think it was going to be via, that quick of fashion. And there was a lot of really good finishes and fun finishes on this card. But right, I have to give a lot of credit to Jake Matthews for the win. He's now put together 3 consecutive victories, wins over Phil Rowe, Francisco Prado, and Njokuani. The thing about Jake Matthews has always been, he's just been another guy in the weight class. That is now actually his 15th victory in the UFC octagon. And, if you look at the record books and whatnot, 20 wins is a pretty big deal. Like Derrick Lewis today just got his 20th victory in the UFC. So anyone who is at that, I like to call it the 20-win club, you're in like big stuff in the UFC, right? I mean, there are off the top of my head, Max Holloway, Jim Miller, Donald Cerrone, Damian Maia, Dustin Poirier, Derrick Lewis now, John Jones. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple. BJ Penn's definitely does not have 20. Definitely forgetting a couple guys, but that's an elite class. Those are veterans of the sport who've been there and have won big fights. Jake Matthews is 5 fights away from that now, right? And ultimately, right, I'm sure Jake Matthews' goal is the UFC championship. This is a guy who was brought into the UFC off the Ultimate Fighter when he was 22 years of age. He's still 30, 3 straight victories for him. Is he close to the rankings? No, he's not, okay? He's not close to the rankings right now at 170 pounds just because of how, stacked this division is. Hell, we saw a guy in the co-main event in the evening tonight who likely will break his way in to the top 15 undeservedly, and I have a lot to say about that. But for Jake Matthews, right, coming off of that win, it just depends what the UFC wants to do with him. I could see a Mike Malott fight. I could. Mike Malott's not booked right now. I could see if they want to go Gunnar Nelson. I could see that as well. There's fights. There's 100% fights for Jake Matthews. Neil Magny's another guy with 20 victories in the UFC. Hell, if you want to go 2 guys off the same card, Chris Curtis will be available, and Chris Curtis will be looking to get within that top 15 realm pretty soon. We're going to talk about Chris Curtis in just a few seconds here. But really good victory for Jake Matthews. I was happy, right? We had him just to win the fight at plus money, or it was minus 105 to kick off the week. I got it personally at plus 103 around. So good win for Jake Matthews. Didn't think he was going to get it done just like that. And Njokuani, just a disappointing performance. Nothing else I can say about that. Obviously, Chidi wanted to try to box Jake Matthews' face in. Didn't go his way. It is what it is. Chidi did not miss weight. I don't know why. I think Chidi, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong here. I think Chidi weighed in over, then he re-weighed in at 170.5. Could be wrong on that. But anyways, there was a problem I thought with Njokuani too. He's 36. 36 at 170 pounds isn't usually a pathway to success. And I know I'm going to talk about a 37-year-old who just won at 170 pounds in a second. But yeah, I thought Jake Matthews was just better than Chidi Njokuani as a whole. And he's younger. And that's why ultimately Jake Matthews won the fight. And obviously, again, it was his grappling that won him the fight. So good on the Australian Jake Matthews winning the fight by a rear naked choke 69 seconds into the fight. We move now to our sixth bout of the night. Max Payne Griffin and Chris Curtis. This fight was ultimately won right by the action man, Chris Curtis. I didn't think the fight was that close, right? Chris Curtis wins a split decision. Featured prelim spot, he wins a split. I didn't see it. I really didn't. I thought easily Max Payne Griffin, well, not easily, but I thought Max Griffin won the first, and I thought it was pretty clear the second and third rounds, were won by the action man. I didn't like the scorecards at all. What are we watching there? Chris Curtis just outdamages Max Griffin in the second and the third. And I think the final significant strike total in the second round, I think, is in favor of Max Griffin. Again, that's just a whole, you got to watch the fight to see it, right? If you look at it on paper and say, oh, Griffin outstruck, Curtis by 5 strikes. Okay, sure. Chris Curtis was doing so much more damage with his punches than Max Payne Griffin was. Now, I was concerned at the end of the fight. I thought Curtis had won, and obviously this was the first leg of our 2-leg parlay today. We didn't hit it, obviously, and I'll get to that in a second, but again, still a positive day with the best bets. But I was concerned with Chris Curtis because I was like, oh, goodness, this guy, and I detailed this a lot, this guy is literally, I'm on Tapology here, whoops. This guy is literally he is the unluckiest fighter on the face of the planet, right? Chris Curtis is very unlucky. The Roman Kopylov stoppage, the fight against Brendan Allen that he should have won. Well, he goes out here and he gets the nod. I was scared when Bruce Buffer read the split. Ultimately, right, the Action Man gets the victory, and he reestablishes himself now at 170 pounds, a weight class that he had not fought in just yet in the UFC, right? Curtis has fought 170 pounds before, most notably in his PFL days, where he fought in the 2019 PFL season, ended up beating Andrea Fiallo, losing to Magomed Karamov, and then losing actually twice to Magomed Karamov, and then getting knocked out against Ray Cooper III. Curtis eventually retired, came back. He's back, and I'm glad he is. Chris Curtis is a fun fighter. Chris Curtis is a fun fighter. He's in your face. He's going to give you fun fights. Obviously, right, out of Extreme Couture, out in Las Vegas. Sean Strickland, obviously the main training partner. I was impressed by the victory from Chris Curtis. I'm glad he's fighting at 170 pounds. And I think he should be fighting in the rankings next. I did mention Jake Matthews as a potential opponent. I could see that definitely. I much rather him get a fight closer to the rankings. I would like to see Vicente Luque. Luque is coming off that submission loss to Kevin Holland. That's the fight I would like to see next. I think Chris Curtis is more than capable of fighting in the top 15 of the weight class. That makes sense. Max Griffin, about the same age as Chris Curtis. Never thought he was on that level. Made sense for me. The Action Man was going to win, and obviously that's what happened. So Chris Curtis wins it by decision. I was happy with the result. I didn't think it was a split, though. I thought Curtis easily won rounds 2 and 3. Okay, going on in the main card, Tuco Tokkos has now won a fight in the UFC. Oh, man. I just... He's not good, man. He's not good at fighting. But you know who's worse at fighting? Actually, no, I will give Tokkos some credit here. He's better than Junior Tafa is. I mean, guys, Junior Tafa is not a UFC caliber fighter. And, okay, I'm wrong. I was wrong, right? This is one of the 2 fights we had wrong. I didn't think Junior Tafa was going to be that bad defensively in terms of grappling and wrestling at 205 pounds, just because he looked a lot slimmer. Gas tank should have been better. Should have been able to fight off takedowns better. No, not at all. Tafa had his moments on the feet, 100%. Second round, he clips Tuco Tokkos. Clips him in the first 2, but ultimately his biggest moment came in the second round. Really wobbled Tokkos. Tokkos scrambles for a takedown, eventually gets it, puts Tafa on his back, gets him with the arm triangle choke. Good win for Tokkos, right? He will probably get his wish of fighting in the UK by the end of the year. I assume the UFC's going back to the UK, I think. If not, he'll fight in Paris, probably. If they want to give him that spot, I don't know. They'll probably just give him a spot where he's going to get killed. Like, they'll give him, I don't know, who's an up-and-coming 205-pounder they can give Tuco Tokkos. I'll find one in a second. That would make sense. I want to say Umar Sy, but he's already fought Umar Sy. That fight isn't changed for me what Tuco Tokkos is, and that's just a punching bag for the most part, a guy who is just a stepping stone for lower-ranked guys coming off the Contender Series, like his 2 fights so far in the UFC. And in all fairness, Tokkos said this himself after he won in his post-fight interview. He said, okay, I've fought only undefeated up-and-coming guys so far in my UFC run. Navajo Sterling, Umar Sy. Umar Sy ended up losing to Alonzo Metafield. But that's a decent point. There's a reason Buddy was in that spot, though. They don't... UFC doesn't see Tuco Tokkos as anything. They want him to get beat up so they can, make guys' names off of him. I'm trying to see who's an up-and-coming guy that the UFC can book Tokkos against. Maybe this guy isn't in the UFC yet because, they're gonna have to sign a bunch of guys coming off the Contender real soon. Maybe they throw him a bone and they give him like an Ivan Ursulan. That'd be a real bone for him. I would say Paul Craig, but they gave him Bukowskis coming up. They should give him Adolfo Bellotto. There you go. Give him Bellato, who obviously had an Oscar-worthy performance in his last fight against Paul Craig. That's the fight to make. Get Bellato on the right track, I guess, if he deserves it. And just get him a victory. He's not going to fake getting kicked in the face against Tuco Tokkos, right? And it's kind of a stylistic same approach for for Bellato, right? You gotta deal with somewhat of a grappler. I know, again, different style of grappler that Tuco Tokkos is compared to Paul Craig. I wouldn't mind seeing the fight, though. That's probably what's next for me if I had to book that. But yeah, Tuco Tokkos with a victory. I don't want to see Junior Tafa anywhere near the UFC anymore. You can't teach grappling, I guess. The guy swings hard, but doesn't every heavyweight or every light heavyweight who comes down. Just inexcusable, man. You got to win that fight against a straight can they gifted you. Okay, he should be cut. If Justin Tafa loses his next fight too, he should be cut, and we should be done with the Tafas. Okay, they were nothing compared to what Mark Hunt was for the UFC. Okay, our next fight in the heavyweight division: Vitor Petrino, Austen Lane. So our best bet for this, unfortunately, was Vitor Petrino first round knockout. Going forwards, I'm not going to risk that on the best bets. I'm just going to call first round stoppage, okay? That's my fault. Okay, that was the first UFC best bet. I should have made that adjustment. Because there was always a possibility that Petrino did submit Austen Lane. And I did bet the under too. It was like minus 130 originally going into the week. Under 1.5 rounds, like minus 150. So I was like, I'm going to stay away. Saw it on the night of the fights tonight and took it at minus 130. Really happy with that decision. I was a little concerned just in general, not even with the under bet of initially Petrino's, lack of urgency to try to finish the fight on the ground, right? He gets Austen Lane down fairly easily. And then kind of just, he immediately after he gets the takedown, he goes straight into full mount, right? Gets straight into full mount, really working for an arm triangle, doesn't get it because he can't pass into side control. Ultimately, Lane scrambles, Petrino ends up on his back and gets the rear naked choke, really pulling on it a little bit. Thought he was going to have to adjust to a neck crank because I didn't think he could get under the chin of Austen Lane. He does, though, ultimately, and taps Austen Lane out 4 minutes into the fight. So a good victory for Petrino. First round finish like we expected, just not by strikes. So again, my fault on that. Austen Lane, though, he's not a good striker, too. So that's why I picked the knockout. Under cash, though, fairly easily, right? Petrino is just on a different level than Austen Lane. And this goes to show, like I said over the week, light heavyweight so much better than heavyweight. Vitor Petrino, guys, was getting subbed by Anthony Smith in his home country just a year ago. Like a year and 2 months ago, that was happening to Vitor Petrino. In December, he got knocked out by Njokuani. Former glory kickboxer, yeah. But this guy was a top 15 washout at 205 pounds. He was going nowhere, and he comes up to heavyweight, and is Austen Lane a top 15 guy at all? No, but comes in immediately to heavyweight and beats up on Austen Lane really quickly. It just shows you how bad 265 pounds is. There are just so many low-level heavyweights like Austen Lane who just don't deserve to be in the UFC. So what would I do for Vitor Petrino next in the promotion? I go Don'Tale Mayes. Yeah, I'd go Don'Tale Mayes. Because Vitor Petrino doesn't deserve anywhere near the top 15. The Don'Tale Mayes fight, to me, makes a lot of sense. You give him a guy who has actually been in and out of the top 15 a little bit, but you really should be nowhere near the top 15 of the weight class. Don'Tale Mayes is not good, and that's another, kind of test for Vitor Petrino. Give him a veteran that he can probably beat. Oh my goodness. He throws hard, right? Petrino throws hard. I was concerned about the chin, don't get me wrong, because of that fight against Njokuani, but looked good against Austen Lane. He still hasn't taken a punch yet at 265 pounds, really, because Lane didn't land anything of note. So there is something, like how will Vitor Petrino look against a power puncher? Don'Tale Mayes will not be that guy. But this is going to be the wave. Light heavyweights trying to come up to 265 because, I know Nzechukwu didn't win tonight, but Nzechukwu has seen a lot of success up here. It can be done. And a lot of light heavyweights should be looking to make the move. Like Johnny Walker should be looking to make the move as well. I mean, look how much success his brother is having at 265 pounds. So, good win for Vitor Petrino. We saw it coming. He wins it by first round sub. Okay, let's move on now to our next bout. In the featherweight division, Nate the Train Landwehr takes on Morgan Charriere. Morgan Charriere with the victory. Interesting fight. So we thought Charriere was going to win. I thought he was going to get it done in the second round. He ultimately does it in the third. two different rounds were fought, right? First round, really good round for Morgan Charriere, right? Looking like, okay, he's just going to dominate Nate Landwehr. He's landing first. He's landing the better shots. Early in the fight, I was like, okay, this is what I expected. I thought, okay, Charriere is probably going to break him going into the second round. Well, no, it completely gets flipped in the second round. Nate Landwehr's, going into Nate the Train mode. He's pushing the pace in that one. He's backing Morgan Charriere up. He's really seeing success. Ultimately, in the commentaries, I think DC referenced this, and it was true. Nate the Train was purely headhunting, right? Charriere is still looking to work the body. He's still working everything, while Nate the Train is just looking to take his head off with every single punch that he threw. Nate wins the second round, but in the third round, Charriere comes out the stool or out the corner. He goes after Nate Landwehr. He catches him up against the fence, ends up putting him down twice, really, and Morgan Charriere wins it by third round knockout. A very good fight. A result, though, we anticipated and expected. I told you that I thought Nate the Train was going to lose in his home state in Tennessee. Nashville is about 30-something minutes away from his actual hometown over in Tennessee. And Morgan Charriere, at his best, can be really good. You look at his record, and I said this over the week, you look at his record, it's 21-11-1. I know, that's nothing to write home about. But if you really dive deep into what he's done in the regional scene, he's fought nothing but savages, okay? Early in his run, fighting in regionals in Paris, he had a rough start to his career. The guy started his pro career 2-3, okay? But he goes in, he fights, again, Soren Bach will never be, an uber prospect. But fights Soren Bach early in his run as a professional. Jordan Vucenic for the Cage Warriors Championship, loses to Paul Hughes. Such tough guys to fight in the regional scene, especially in Cage Warriors, right? Charriere, as a whole, has been good in the UFC, right? Losses to Shepe Mariscal and Nathaniel Wood. Okay, that's going to happen. Wins over Manolo Zincheni, Gabriel Miranda, and now Nate the Train Landwehr. I did hear that Nate Landwehr's contract is up after this fight. I really implore the UFC to re-sign the guy. I don't care. He's now lost back-to-back fights. You have no reason not to re-sign Nate the Train. I know he's now lost 3 of 4, actually. Losing to Dan Ige, beating Jamal Emmers, and losing back-to-back fights to the Korean Superboy, Dooho Choi, and Morgan Charriere. You have no reason to not extend Nate the Train. He only gives you fun fights. Tonight was an example of that. It was fight of the night, too. So I really hope they extend his contract. There are fights that Nate the Train can have in the UFC. I saw someone, I don't remember who it was, on Twitter saying Hyder and Mill would be a fun fight. That's definitely there. I think Billy Quarantillo actually should be the fight instead. Quarantillo coming off loss to Cub Swanson in Tampa last year. I don't believe Quarantillo got cut or has retired. I don't think. He's the guy who's going to bring it. I don't really know how much damage he can take at this point, so I'm kind of just throwing Nate the Train a lob here. But that's personally the fight I would like to see. For Charriere, still a fight away from the top 15. Maybe a couple fights away. There's 2 ways we can go. We can go Korean Superboy. Dooho Choi makes a lot of sense. We could go Jorgensen Breathe, who's coming off a couple losses. I wouldn't mind seeing Cub Swanson. Did Cub Swanson retire after his last fight? I don't think he did, right? I'm pretty sure he was pondering it, but he didn't retire. Regardless, there's fights. There are fights for Morgan Charriere. Will he be a top 15 fighter eventually? I don't know. I mean, I look at the top 15 at featherweight. There's good fighters in that top 15, right? Really good fighters. Calvin Kattar's about to drop out, but likely Steve Garcia is going to enter those ranks, or maybe probably Steve Garcia is going to enter that. I mean, the 15th ranked featherweight in the world is probably going to be actually still Calvin Kattar, because Giga Chikadze is ranked 15th, Kattar's 14th. You can't bump Giga out for Kattar likely. There's good fighters in the weight class. There really are. So Charriere probably still a couple fights away from the top 15, but we should see him building towards that soon. When Charriere pulls the trigger, though, he's good. He's good. He's got really good hands. Just a really underrated fighter, but he's still a couple fights away from the top 15, though, where like Nathaniel Wood beat him, and Nathaniel Wood not ranked yet, even though Wood should be fighting soon for the top 15. Like, I don't know where he goes. Like, give me Nathaniel Wood and Sean Woodson. I'd like to see that, too. But good win for Charriere. Picks up the win over Nate the Train. Really everything we thought it was going to be, just a round later. So, anyways, let's move on now to our feature fight on this card, Calvin Kattar, Steve Garcia. So I did, again, briefly mention Garcia and Calvin Kattar. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it was everything we thought it was going to be, except for a finish from Garcia, right? I picked Steve Garcia by knockout. It didn't go that way. That's okay. The best bet was Steve Garcia by just to win, right? We had Steve Garcia money line. Calvin Kattar is still hesitant to pull the trigger at all times. He is hesitant to throw. It was apparent in the Garcia fight. He loses 30-27. I mean, post-injury, Calvin Kattar has not been good, right? He gets injured against Arnold Allen, comes back at UFC 300 against Aljamain Sterling, gets dominated. Youssef Zalal beats him 30-27, and now he loses 30-27 to the mean machine, Steve Garcia. Now, I think my knockout pick for Garcia, I'll just be honest, I think that was bad. I kind of wanted to trend towards the side, okay, Kattar's washed, he's not going to be able to eat the damage. Okay, he did go 25 minutes and eat 500 significant strikes against Max Holloway. Okay, so this guy probably will never get knocked out. So probably a bad read on my end there. But right, we just had Garcia to win. I said at the beginning of the week, I don't know why the odds are this close. I believe on Thursday night I saw Steve Garcia got to about minus 105, minus 110-ish. He ultimately closed at about minus 145-ish, minus 150-ish. But at the start of the week, he was minus 135, minus 120, give or take. I thought that was an absolute steal, an absolute robbery line for Steve Garcia, and ultimately that proved true. Calvin Kattar just was not throwing anything back at Steve Garcia. It's not the end for Calvin Kattar yet. I think they will give him one more fight. But if Calvin Kattar cannot win his next fight in the UFC, he is likely getting cut. What the promotion needs to do is give him a guy outside the top 15. Well, they did against Steve Garcia, and he lost. So I don't know where they go for Kattar just yet. He's 37. He's looking like the worst version of Calvin Kattar we have ever seen. I know that's tough to hear, but it's the truth. I mean, you have him fight down the rankings next. You have him fight... He was booked against Kyle Nelson last year. I would do Kyle Nelson again. Fight fell through, I believe... Because Kattar, I think Nelson just pulled out, right? No, Kattar withdrew from that fight. Okay. Yeah, I would like to see that fight get done again. Kattar's now lost 5 fights in a row. I don't think you cut him after this just because he's still a ranked fighter. Maybe they do because they don't want to pay him anymore. But if you want to give him one more fight, I would do Kyle Nelson. They were booked in September of 2024. I ultimately think Calvin Kattar probably loses to Kyle Nelson because Nelson will throw. He's a firefighter. Not actually a firefighter, but he's willing to get into firefights, right? The thing with Kattar is just he's hesitant to pull the trigger. There's no other way to put it, right? That Calvin Kattar that was always throwing that jab, was always throwing something, that Calvin Kattar is gone, okay? Post-injury, Kattar did something to him. He got dropped at the end of the third round by Steve Garcia. Garcia wobbled him early in the third as well. To me, it just looks like Calvin Kattar is fighting to not get knocked out there. Not really willing to take any chances. Not trying to, inflict any damage at the same time in his own right. It's just not the same guy. I think Garcia is good. I think he is, That's why I thought this was such a lock for Steve Garcia, and I thought the odds were ridiculous to start the week. Because Steve Garcia will be ranked after this, right? He will be the number 14th ranked featherweight in the world. He called out Youssef Zalal for an Apex main event. I don't know why you'd call that out, but... I'm sure the UFC is going to be willing to oblige. I think that's probably his next date. And I think I know the exact date that fight, if they're going to make it, should be booked. I don't know if this can headline a Apex card, but I could see it as a co-main event on the Apex, or at least just on a main card of a fight night, with a crowd. Probably September 20th in the Apex. You look at the UFC schedule right now, they've got everything booked in terms of location and fights all the way towards September 13th, which is Noche in San Antonio. Then there's a gap in the schedule from September 13th to October 4th. They're not going to go, 3 weeks off without having a fight? Actually, right now they have a 2-week break. I highly doubt the UFC takes 2 weeks off. That's just not what they do. They probably will take 1 week off going into UFC 320, in October, which I don't know who that's going to be just yet. Likely Pereira. They'll probably take a week off going into that card. So probably there will be a fight card either on the 19th or the 26th. There's going to be a week off somewhere in there. That's probably that Apex card because they've already announced, the Canada card in October, Abu Dhabi card in October as well. They need to announce those dates ahead of time because they need to sell tickets. They don't need to sell tickets to the Apex, so they can just really fill in any card that they want in the Apex. And they don't even have a date scheduled just yet. So probably either September 20th or September 27th. I know it's a quick turnaround for Steve Garcia, but he's a guy who likes to remain active. Youssef Zalal beat Kattar first quarter of 2025. I think you have them fight each other in the Apex. I'm not going to lie, that's a horrible main event for the Apex. I'm so serious. I know Apex main events aren't that good. At least throw us a high-ranked flyweight fight. Throw Manel Kape back in there and give him Kai Kara-France. I don't think Kai Kara-France is going to turn around that quickly. But I would much rather do that than we main event Steve Garcia and Youssef Zalal. What? But no, good performance for Steve Garcia. Did what he needed to do. Not his fault. Kattar wasn't really engaging. Garcia, I will give him credit. He tried to finish the fight. Couldn't do it. Kattar's tough. But Steve Garcia with the biggest victory of his career so far. Co-main event. This is ridiculous. I know the word robbery is overused sometimes. No, this was a robbery. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson beat Gabriel Bonfim. He did. He beat Bonfim. And when they read split decision, I was scared. Just like when I was scared when they read split decision for the Chris Curtis fight. I was like, oh goodness, they're going to rob Wonderboy. And they did. Mike Bell, of course, on the wrong side of another scorecard. Okay, first round's Gabriel Bonfim's round. It is. Okay, I'm not going to disagree with that. I thought Bonfim won it, obviously, and you really can't score that one for Stephen Thompson. Bonfim takes him down. Bonfim puts Wonderboy on his back. Sure. Second round, that's Stephen Thompson's round. Okay? And that's the round that all three judges actually agreed on. That's the round where, yes, Bonfim does check one of Wonderboy's kicks and splits his shin wide open. Wonderboy kind of falls after after the kicks checked, ultimately stays in the fight, and I think wins the second round. Obviously, the judges thought he won the second round, so that's not the problem. The third round was the problem. One judge scores it for Stephen Thompson, the other two score it for Gabriel Bonfim. Guys, I will say this time in and time out, and it's so true. Just control time and hugging guys doesn't win you fights. It can lead to you winning fights if you actually do something with those takedowns, if you actually try to do damage or try to attempt a submission, like Bonfim did in the first round. He tried to attempt that rear naked choke on Wonderboy. Wonderboy got out of it, okay? Doing what Bonfim did in the last 2 minutes of the fight against Stephen Thompson, in a round, by the way, where Wonderboy catches him with a beautiful high kick. Kind of wobbles Bonfim. Bonfim threw 2 punches in the third round, and he won the round because, I can just take a guy down, hold him down, bear hug him, and just hold on for dear life for 2 minutes at the end of the round, and judges in the sport of mixed martial arts will give me the decision. That's not cage fighting. It's a fight. You don't win a fight by hugging a guy. If you do it for 25 minutes, okay, well, what else are you gonna do, right? But it's the fact of the matter that Stephen Thompson actually did damage in the third round. Stephen Thompson was winning the third round. He lands a high kick on Bonfim. He obviously won the second round. It's a horrible scorecard. It's a robbery. It's disgusting. Legends of the sport like Stephen Thompson deserve better. And, is it like, is Stephen Thompson going to get a title shot? Where it's actually a conversation we're about to have about Derrick Lewis in a few moments here. Is Wonderboy going to get a title shot? Is Wonderboy going to fight in the top 5 ever? Again, probably not. But this does it for Stephen Thompson in terms of a top 15 career. I think Wonderboy, win or lose, his next fight probably just does one more. He's 42. I think Stephen Thompson probably has one more fight, his retirement fight. I'd love to see it in Greenville, South Carolina. They did Moicano and Korean Zombie back in 2018 in Greenville, South Carolina, or 2019, 18? One of the two. I'd love to see them go back to Greenville, South Carolina. They have a arena with an 8,900 person capacity. I'd love to just bring Wonderboy over there. He can be a co-main if you really don't want to main event him. But you're giving Poirier a retirement fight this weekend. And I know, again, Poirier's done more for the sport than Stephen Thompson has. But give Stephen Thompson his farewell. Give him the send-off. Let him fight at home in Greenville, South Carolina. And I will give you an opponent in a second. But I understand how he loses to Bonfim there. For Gabriel Bonfim, he's going to be ranked. Say what you want. He's going to be ranked. I don't know if Stephen Thompson's going to be ranked after this. I don't think Bonfim deserves to fight up the rankings, though. I think he will fight a guy outside of the rankings after this victory. I think we could see him against Randy Brown. Makes a lot of sense. Randy Brown makes a lot of sense for that fight. Yeah, probably Randy Brown. Randy Brown's right outside the rankings. Randy Brown's coming off the knockout victory over Nicholas Dalby. I could see that. If Carlos Leal isn't booked, I would say that fight too. And Carlos Leal actually fights in 2 weeks. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind just seeing Leal just destroy Gabriel Bonfim. So, either of those fights work for me. Because I know Leal's going to beat Muslim Salikov. Salikov's like 39, 40. So, Leal's going to be looking to try to get in the rankings. Bonfim's probably going to be in the rankings. So, either a Leal or Randy Brown fight. Personally, actually, I'd much rather see Carlos Leal. That's a guy who's going to be in the top 10 very soon. Let's get Bonfim out of there. Let's put that fight in Brazil next time the UFC goes to Brazil. Yeah. Are they going to Brazil at the end of the year? I think they are, right? I that's what I'd like to see personally. And it's a fight that I think Bonfim would lose. And it's ridiculous. You don't win a fight like that. You don't win fights off of just hugging guys. Stephen Thompson should have won What is Wonderboy's retirement fight? Please give him a guy we know he can just go out there and beat up. Max Griffin. Yep. That's the fight I want to see for Stephen Thompson. Max Griffin. Don't give him Jacoby Smith. Don't give him a Gunnar Nelson or a Michael Chiesa guy who's going to try to grapple him. No. I want him to fight Max Payne Griffin or Court McGee. Book Wonderboy like you book Michael Chiesa. Literally, Griffin and Court McGee are Michael Chiesa's last 2 fights. That's who Wonderboy should fight in his retirement fight in Greenville, South Carolina in like January or February of next year. Make it happen, okay? That's how we send off Wonderboy. Or if he doesn't want to retire, then, still give him those guys. I don't care. Really depends on what the UFC wants to do. Wonderboy didn't lose that fight, though. It's ridiculous. Main event. Derrick Lewis. I forgot it on the graphic cards here. Main event. Derrick Lewis. Tallison Teixeira. Yeah, good win for Derrick Lewis. The Black Beast does it again, man. He does it again. I watched the post-fight interview, not the one where Derrick Lewis had with DC and he said he called the president after his victory. I guess the president called him, which is hilarious. When Derrick Lewis on the post-fight show talking to Chiesa, Alan Joban, and whatnot, Chris Weidman, they ask him about the eye thing because early in the fight lasts 30 seconds. Teixeira lands first, okay, and Derrick Lewis is like doing this to his eye. He's like scratching at it. We've seen that happen to Derrick Lewis before. He thinks he gets eye poked, and actually no, it's just a punch. Well, I don't know if he was deking him there or not. Lewis said he was, but it is what it is. Like, we've seen Lewis play possum before. The JDS fight in Wichita, Kansas, the spinning back kick by JDS to the body. Lewis bends over and goes like this, and obviously hits him with a big overhand, or at least attempts to hit him with a big overhand as JDS went back into the fire with his hands down with a push kick. Anyways, which still should not have been the entry level there for JDS. Anyways, Dos Santos won that fight. But I don't know if that's what Lewis was trying to do or not. Ultimately, he knocks out Tallison Teixeira, catches him with a really nice left hook. And will I tell you there's a lot of skill in that fight? No, there wasn't. It's just Derrick Lewis. That's what it was. It was Derrick Lewis winning the fight. And I said this at the beginning of the week, and I said it throughout the week. I did not think Tallison Teixeira was that good. I thought plus 265 for Derrick Lewis was an absolute steal. Tallison Teixeira, I told you, if you watched the Contender Series, you knew. Tallison Teixeira is not on Derrick Lewis's level. He let a taxi cab driver from Brazil, like Derrick Lewis jokes that he wants to fight taxi cab drivers from Brazil. No. The guy, Arthur Lopez, the guy that Tallison Teixeira fought, was legitimately a taxi cab driver in Brazil. I've talked so much shit about Arthur Lopez, by the way. I don't actually dislike Arthur Lopez as a person. I don't know the guy. I hope I don't have a 265-pound Brazilian man out for me now because I've called him a bum really throughout this entire week. But Arthur Lopez landed so much in Tallison Teixeira on the Contender Series. Tallison Teixeira does not block punches at all. He will swing, but he leaves his head wide open in the air. And that's what happened in the Derrick Lewis fight. Teixeira lands. All right, he lands that left, and he thinks, okay, I have it. I got Derrick Lewis. He's messing with his eye. I have him now. So Teixeira just starts swinging. What does he not do? He has nothing defensively. Derrick Lewis swings. Derrick Lewis throws a big right, misses, big left, connects. Catches him on the chin. Puts Tallison Teixeira down. Ground and pound. I was really surprised that Tallison Teixeira didn't lose consciousness for the amount of huge shots Derrick Lewis was throwing on the ground. Because Derrick Lewis, not a ground fighter at all, but a guy that if he throws ground and pound, not the ground and pound he was saying he was going to do to his wife after the fight, but if he throws ground and pound strikes, it's over for you if it connects. I mean, I've seen that so many times. Travis Brown, Alexander Volkov, all of his big Ticos win. Alexei Oleinik, like every single fight that Derrick Lewis gets on the ground, and if a guy's still conscious, Derrick Lewis will separate you from your consciousness once he's hitting you or at your connecting with his ground and pound. I was surprised Tallison Teixeira still had consciousness. Now, the stoppage, I don't dislike it at all. Tallison Teixeira, and the broadcast brought this up too, Tallison Teixeira is grabbing the fence to try to get back up. Okay, you can't stop the fight there to say take a point away. No. Tallison Teixeira, if he wasn't clawing out the fence, the fight's over because he's not going to be able to get back up that way, and Derrick Lewis is just going to continue to hammer him on the ground. And eventually, yes, that would have separated Tallison Teixeira from consciousness. So I don't mind the stoppage at all. Yes, it was early, but if Teixeira doesn't grab the fence, he just gets knocked down on the ground anyway. So if anything, Herzog just saved him. And I don't know if Teixeira thought he was still in the fight or whatnot. Like, Teixeira did look confused when he got back up. He kind of pushes Herzog, which I get was just frustration, but I don't know if, again, that's just, I don't know where his headspace was at, obviously. But a great win for Derrick Lewis. A tremendous victory, and it just shows, again, Derrick Lewis fights well against 6, tall fighters. Travis Brown, Volkov, and now Tallison Teixeira. Tallison Teixeira just wasn't on his level. UFC tried to book Derrick Lewis against Jonathan Deniz and Alexander Romanov. Both those fights fell through back in Edmonton last year. But Derrick Lewis is just on a different level than these low-level guys. Not Waldo Cortez Costa, that's a potential fight. But the, Rodrigo Nascimento fight, Marcos Rodrigo de Lima. Like, these guys are just not on Derrick Lewis's level. The only guy that Derrick Lewis has lost to recently that just makes you kind of question things is Tai Tuivasa. Other than that, his losses are Sergey Pavlovich, Sergey Spivak, which, okay, whatever. Cyril Gane, and that's, Jason Almeida, and that's it, since COVID. He doesn't lose to bad fighters. So this was an embarrassment. This was a joke of matchmaking, and we saw this through right away from Derrick Lewis. So great win for the Black Beast. He called out Waldo Cortez Acosta on the post-fight show. Now, the UFC, the commentary team, and the post-fight team was really pushing the fact that Derrick Lewis, they think, should fight for the belt next. I'm not against it. I'm really not. I mean, in a world where we gave Sean O'Malley an immediate rematch, I'm not against you giving a shot to Derrick Lewis because, A, that sells pay-per-views, and that's probably Derrick Lewis's last ever shot at the belt. And then, okay, then you can actually do Cyril Gane versus Jason Almeida to determine the true number one contender. And then, I don't know what you do with Alexander Volkov, I'll just be honest with you. I think Volkov needs to have his rematch with Curtis Blades. That's what needs to happen there. He lost the initial Blades fight. If he can win it, then boom. Okay. Whoever is most impressive in their win gets the shot. Again, if I'm the UFC or if I'm, if I'm booking things and I'm trying to remain confident in terms of, who's deserving of getting a title shot. No, Derrick Lewis does not deserve a title shot. He's coming off a win over a 1-1 fighter now in the UFC, Tallison Teixeira. However, that's going to sell pay-per-views, and that's interesting. I'd love to see him in Tom Aspinall. Would Aspinall win 100%? But imagine if Derrick Lewis is the guy to connect on the chin against Tom Aspinall and knock him out. And then we have John Jones, Derrick Lewis. Because we know John Jones is coming back, guys. John Jones is coming back for the White House next year on July 4th. It's whoever is the champion then on July 4th will fight John Jones. It's likely going to be Tom Aspinall. I'll be really surprised if it's not. We know John Jones is praying that Derrick Lewis can somehow chin Tom Aspinall and win the title. But, again, we'll see. I think much more likely, though, I don't think the UFC is going to jump to a Derrick Lewis title shot. I've seen crazier things. I saw a 46-year-old Hendo get a shot for the belt against Bisping way back in the day. But I think Lewis will probably get the Waldo Cortez Acosta fight next. And then, okay, that fight can get him to the belt. And this is why I think it's a good call for Derrick Lewis, okay? I'm not even going to tell you who I think Tallison Teixeira should fight next. Like, legitimately, I don't know. I don't really care. Like, he should be fighting like a Lucas... No, Brzeski's outside the UFC now. I don't care who he fights next. Like, it just... Is De Lima still... If De Lima's still in the UFC, sure, that's the next fight. I think De Lima is still in the UFC. Okay, De Lima should be his next fight. But it's a smart call out for Derrick Lewis. You look at the top of the weight class. Okay, Derrick Lewis beating Waldo Cortez Acosta. Waldo's ranked 6th. That gets Lewis to the belt. Just because of, okay, Aspinall wants to fight everybody in the top 10, and Derrick Lewis has a name. If he can go out and beat Waldo, which I think he would. I'm going to be honest with you. Yes, Waldo throws really nice leg kicks. I just have a feeling Waldo's going to throw a leg kick and just get hammered while doing it. Because Waldo does drop his left hand on his low kicks, and I just think Lewis is going to catch him really early. So, if Lewis wins that fight, you then avoid the Jason Almeida rematch, you avoid the Curtis Blades rematch, you avoid the Sergey Pavlovich rematch, you avoid the Alexander Volkov rematch, and you avoid the Cyril Gane rematch. Derrick Lewis has fought everybody in the top 5, except for the champion, Tom Aspinall. Hell, he's fought Tybura before, he's ranked 7th, right? I'm pretty sure he fought Tybura a long time ago, right? No, he didn't. Yes, he did fight Tybura. He beat him in what? I was thinking the Eduarda fight, but he beat Tybura in Austen, right? So yeah, Lewis has fought, oh my goodness. Lewis has fought everybody in the top 10 not named Waldo Cortez Acosta. Because he fought Spivak, fought Tuivasa. Wow. Yeah, this has to be the fight. It's got to be Waldo. It's Waldo or Aspinall. They're not going to book Lewis in a rematch just because there's no reason to, and there's better fights for other guys. So yeah, it's going to be either Waldo, or if the UFC is going to get crazy, it's going to be Tom. I think it's going to be Waldo Cortez Acosta, though, for Derrick Lewis next. I think it's a fight that he wins, and I think, yes, Derrick Lewis, I would say, I'm going to guess February of next year is going to fight himself in a world championship fight, where it will be Tom Aspinall versus Derrick Lewis, and the winner will have a date with John Jones for the heavyweight championship on the 4th of July on the White House. I'm serious. I think Aspinall, if I had to guess, they're going to do Aspinall gone. That's just what they're going to do, and they're going to make Volkov fight Almeida. Yeah, and they're going to skip the winner of Volkov Almeida for Derrick Lewis because that's money and that's pay-per-view. And Derrick Lewis will fight Tom Aspinall in February after Aspinall beats Gane in November. Probably November. Maybe October. And yeah, we will get Derrick Lewis. I think we'll get Derrick Lewis and Tom Aspinall in February of next year, where the winner will fight John Jones. What a timeline. What a damn timeline. So, folks, that does it for our UFC Nashville recap here on the channel. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more and leave a like. I'm planning on doing one of these every single week. We'll have our predictions out tomorrow for UFC 318 and Monday for PFL Africa 1. And then also our best bets for both the UFC and the PFL will come out throughout the week to Tuesday and likely Wednesday on those. So make sure to join us for that. Folks, thank y'all for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. And Mamba